Hi, I'm Sakura Armstrong, and I'm a student affiliate here at the Center for the Study of Global Japan. And today I am joined by Professor Phillip Lipscy, the director here at the center and a professor of political science here at U of T. So we're here today sort of to discuss your role at the center and what sort of your hopes and sort of goals are for the center in the future. So I just wanted to start by asking you sort of, how did you end up as the director? What was your professional and academic trajectory to get here?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in Japan. My mother is Japanese. I spent quite a bit of time there in my childhood. But when I entered college, I was actually thinking of studying physics. And I took some physics classes. I also took political science classes. And, for me, really the critical moment was when I enrolled in a Japanese politics class by Professor Dan Okimoto at Stanford. And, at the time I had bleached hair that was down to my shoulders and braces. And, I didn't present very well. And here I was a sophomore trying to enroll in a class primarily intended for PhD students. But the professor really took a chance on me. And, that was probably one moment that completely changed the course of my life. So one lesson I take from that is you should obviously never judge your students by their appearance, because I was a beneficiary of that myself. But since then I did my PhD in political science, and I've made Japanese politics and foreign policy a major area of my research. So when this opportunity came up in 2019 to come to University of Toronto to head up the Center for the Study of Global Japan, I just thought, wow, this is a spectacular opportunity and I'd love to do this. And so here I am.
It's fun. Can you tell us a bit more about what you specifically teach and research here?
Sure. So I teach several classes. There's one undergraduate level class on Japanese politics and foreign policy, which is a popular class. It has a long wait list every year. And I think it really does show the level of interest in Japan among the undergraduate students here. But I also teach a class for Masters of Global Affairs students on Canada-Japan relations, where we team up with the Canadian Embassy in Japan and have the students make recommendations about areas where bilateral relations could potentially be improved, and that involves a lot of hand-on practicum projects and guest speakers and so forth. And I teach a whole variety of other classes, but those are probably the ones that are most relevant to what we do at the center.
So about that, so what the center sort of does, can you tell us more about sort of what the center does, maybe like what kind of research comes out of the center, as well as the programs offered, et cetera?
Yeah, so our goal at the center is to, of course, strengthen Japan studies in Canada. We are one of the major centers for Japan studies in the nation. But I think, in addition to that, we would also like to establish ourselves as one of the prominent research centers concerning contemporary Japan in the world. And I think we're very much well on our way. We produce a large volume of research related to Japan. We host many events, and we have a variety of collaborations with other partners. And, I think based on the student interest in Japan, of course, now we have a student affiliate program, which is growing and doing a lot of exciting stuff. And so, I'd like to continue to expand our outreach activities and exchange activities so our students can learn more about Japan and engage more with Japan into the future.
I know I'm especially grateful for the student affiliate program. I'm very glad I joined. So in terms of that, would you say you have any sort of like specific goals that you think like in the next few years you'd really like the program to sort of encompass?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the student affiliate program is something that I hope can be student-led. We created the program in part because there were so many students who took my class on Japanese politics and expressed a very strong interest about continuing to be engaged. One of the things that I do in my class is I have an assignment related to events that our center runs. So there's a short essay assignment. And many of the students said, oh, I didn't know there were events about Japan at the university. And, oh, this is wonderful. I'd like to continue to engage in one way or another. So we created the Student Affiliates Program. It's still quite new, only about 3 years old. And I think there's a lot of potential there. And I hope that the students can come up with their own ideas about what they would like to do and what they can get out of the center. And I'm there to help and assist in any capacity possible.
Very cool. In terms of like Japan and Canada relations, so what do you sort of see is the relationship right now, and where do you see it headed? Sort of, do you have hopes for that? Since I do feel like there's a lot of focus on like US-Japan relations, but Canada-Japan relations is something that's like typically not as focused on. So I'm sort of curious what you perceive that to be and where it'll go.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the stereotype is that Canada-Japan relations have always been amicable. There has been cooperation through the G7 and other international organizations of various sorts, but both countries have tended to prioritize their relationship with the United States or Europe and not necessarily with each other. And in recent years, I think that's really beginning to change. And both countries are placing much greater emphasis on strengthening those bilateral ties and thinking of each other as critical partners in upholding the international order. So I look forward to our center playing a vital role in strengthening that relationship.
For the future of Japan-Canada relations and in connection to the center, how do you see the goals of the center or the projects at the center right now sort of contributing to those relations?
Yeah, so, we've had several events and symposiums that are directly related to Canada-Japan cooperation. Our university president, Merrick Gertler, traveled to Japan and had a meeting with Prime Minister Kishida not too long ago. And there's a variety of ongoing initiatives between U of T and Japanese institutions of various sorts to try to strengthen that relationship. But I also think, it's important for us to bring the entire Japan studies community in Canada and more broadly North America together, because those people-to-people ties really ultimately are the foundations of diplomacy and strong relationships among countries.
And so for like soon-to-be graduates here at U of T, do you have any advice for people wanting to get into maybe Japan studies or academia or political science generally?
Yeah, recently I wrote an article describing Japan as a harbinger state. And, the idea here is that in many ways, Japan has been a step ahead of other countries in confronting major problems, things like demographic change, the rise of China, even the COVID-19 pandemic hit Japan slightly earlier than other countries. And so I think there's an opportunity to learn about Japan and use what's going on in Japan as a way to inform things that are going to happen somewhat later in other parts of the world. And so whether it be from a political science, academic standpoint, or from a policymaking standpoint, I think it's absolutely critical to learn about Japan and to understand what's going on in Japan, because in many ways, Japan's present is the future for the rest of the world.